We've been worried about plagues ever since we understood what they were. And probably even since before then, but we just considered it devilry of some sort. Disease, pestilence, infections, you name it. It's terrified folks for generations. Naturally, people came up with all sorts of explanations for the rapid proliferation of illness. These explanations eventually became stories or symbols or glyphs hammered into the ancient stone walls. But no matter what, they've ingrained themselves in some way into our cultures. Not just pop culture either. Powerful gods and creatures from mythology and beyond have been chosen to embody the plague over the years. Pesta in Norse mythology, the Nosoi in ancient Greece, all sorts of death personifications. They've all appeared in cultures throughout the world. And if you know a thing or two about storytelling, you know that there are no new stories, just old ones dressed up differently. Hello horror heads and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to count down the top 5 scary epidemics from horror fiction, part 2. Not all of these are traditional viruses or diseases either. We've found some modern allegories and alternatives for this list. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more horrid hacks and coughs. Perfect, let's begin. Kicking us off at number 5, we've got The Strain. In this apocalyptic tale from the minds of Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan, we see a world very similar to ours fall to an especially dastardly virus. A big plane lands with no problems until it starts to taxi off the runway. For some reason it stops dead, causing other flights to divert and emergency crews to be dispatched. What they found in the mostly blinded plane was unexpected, to say the least. Every passenger, save for 4 main character types, appeared to be dead. However, what lurked beneath this horrific facade was much, much worse. A vampiric virus, soon to spread through Manhattan and then the world. The Strain highlights fears both classic and present, blending myth and modernity in a fast-paced, very creepy trilogy. In fact, it almost seems like it was tailor-made to become the TV series that aired a few years after the 3rd book was published. Whatever works, right? We follow a wild roster of characters as they try to control the outbreak, along with the inevitable rise of the vampire empire. Applying science to something paranormal like a noxious Nosferatu ailment proves to be very tricky, although fascinating for the reader. Of course, these vampires play by some pretty time-tested rules. No daylight, drinking blood, the works. As the story progresses, we witness some very devious strategies employed by the Night Stalkers in order to ascertain their rule over the world. Their leader, also known as the Master, takes over the body of a rock star, and the son of a major character is groomed as the next host body. Some even more deadly plans for lengthening nighttime are put into effect later in the story, but I'll keep quiet for now. How will the human resistance fare against this powerful threat? Why is this 80-something-year-old man a badass with a sword? Would you be a vampire's slave if it meant your survival? All this and more in The Strain. Shambling at number 4, we've got The Road. Okay, so there's no explicit epidemic in this fantastic post-apocalyptic novel, but when I first read it, I imagined there was. An epidemic of death and despair, an epidemic of madness and exploitation, an epidemic of inhumanity among survivors. All things that spread like a virus amidst the chaos, even if there wasn't any true contagion to begin with. Top that off with one of our 2 main characters suffering from an unknowable and incurable disease, and you've got a story that will petrify and perturb even the steeliest reader. After some unknown world-ending event, society has fallen. Most life on Earth is dead and the world is covered in ash. Everything is gone and the only thing left to eat is each other. This is the prevailing issue that blankets the lives of all survivors like the remnants of fire that coat every surface. A father and son travel the country, scavenging for supplies and human decency. See, these 2 refuse to stoop to the level of the savage bandits roaming around. They will not eat people and they will not kill for any reason short of life-saving self-defense. They're the good guys, the carriers of the fire. The Road is an unendingly bleak read, with tragedy stacked upon tragedy, no way out, but the small victories of father and son make it worth the pain. I specifically remember a passage involving a warm, years-old can of Coke that the man gave to his boy, and it's stuck with me since I first read this years ago. Acts of kindness among the madness and desolation help preserve our humanity. Even if loneliness and violence rack the countryside and spread like disease, there is always something good to be done. In the end, all the man can do is prepare his child for the cruel and unforgiving world, a sort of immunization against inhumanity. Is it enough? Hard to say. I guess it always is. Coming in at number 3, we have Cell. This is another more modern take on the plague. Stephen King's apocalyptic novel centers upon a tech-based killer affliction. Known by survivors as the Pulse, this frenetic cell signal was sent out over a global network and turned anyone with a phone close to their ear into a mindless homicidal automaton. This was published in 2006, so there would have been some survivors still. These days I'd say only the elderly and the hermitous would make it, and of course that's being generous. So society collapses under the pressure of containing so many violent lunatics, and all of the phone-afflicted killers turn on each other and anything that moves. And in a stunning twist of fate, these brainless brutes band together, scavenging for supplies and people to murder, all led by a mysterious, enigmatic raggedy man in a Harvard sweatshirt. I always knew Ivy League schools were up to no good. Our protagonist, a newly employed graphic novel artist, survives the initial blast and spends the rest of the novel searching for his son. Through his experiences, many things become crystal clear. The phoners are all part of a hive mind and develop psychic abilities, able to compel weaker people to do all sorts of things. Plus, the Pulse wasn't a one-time deal. It fires again and again, eventually becoming corrupted as well. The folks impacted by these mutated airwaves are damaged even more. So what exactly does that mean? Well, I'll leave that to you. Again, this isn't a traditional disease, it's a modern cellular disease. But keep checking your phones for updates on the latest developments, yeah? Coming in at number 2, we've got Oryx and Crake. You know I gotta show some Canadian love every once in a while. Although she's better known for The Handmaids, among with their tales, Margaret Atwood has authored plenty of dystopian visions from her northern vantage point. One of my personal favorites, originally discovered in the free books bin at a neighborhood-wide garage sale, is Oryx and Crake. This piece of speculative fiction isn't quite science fiction according to Atwood herself, as it's not so far off in the future, nor is it far off from what we're already doing. After meeting the main characters in their youth, we're exposed to all sorts of troubling behavior prevalent in their society. Sound familiar? Depraved actions, social credit, extreme stratification, heavy reliance on technology, biological experiments that border on unethical, and more, all with the tech and media to match. Eventually, somebody develops a wicked drug meant to cure all that ails you: sadness, loneliness, low libido, the big 3 human issues. This super stimulant is known as Bliss Plus and is a massive hit upon release. However, it also contains a bioengineered virus meant to cause a pandemic. And cause a pandemic it does. Humanity is wiped out in an incredibly short time frame. You gotta hand it to the drug peddlers, they did their job extremely well. And in doing this, Oryx and Crake provides a fantastic vantage of a dystopian society before and after a pandemic. But here, the end of humanity isn't the end, it's a new beginning. See, a new, primitive, more easily controlled breed of humanoids is developed before the strain is released. These Neanderthals, also known as Crakers, inherit the Earth. Like the strain, this is the first of 3, so plenty more happens after the outbreak. Strap in, because Canadians know how to make things weird. In fiction, get your mind out of the gutter. And finally, at number 1, I Am Legend. I'm willing to bet a whole bunch of folks had no idea that the classic Will Smith vampire joint was based on a pulpy novel from the 50s, because I sure didn't, until I looked into it. And I also found that the Omega Man was based on this book too. You go, Richard Matheson. Influential as heck. We started this list with a vampire virus, and we'll end it with one too. A sole survivor tale for the ages, I Am Legend focuses on Robert Neville, living in an alternate LA. We follow him as he lives his life months after the blood-sucking breakout. He's constantly stalked and antagonized by the vampires, but has also found many creative ways to dispatch his adversaries. They play by pretty normal vampire rules, meaning that daylight, stakes, crosses, and garlic can be used with deadly efficacy. As time floats by in this hell world, Robert decides to try finding out more about the beasts that ruined everything. Depression and alcoholism get in the way, as they often do, but he discovers plenty of useful information about their origins, strengths, and weaknesses. During this time, he becomes so involved in what he's doing, he actually fails to realize what's going on right outside of his view. I'm not sure if this counts as a twist or a spoiler, so I'll keep it quiet for now. The vampires are definitely more than they seem though, and unfortunately the dog plays a lesser role than in the feature film. So there it is, some books about epidemics to tide you over if you've suddenly been handed a bunch of extreme home-based free time. Nothing quite as virusy as what's going on in the real world right now, but definitely some outrageous outbreaks that will keep you up for ages. What do you think? Are these scary enough for you? What's the scariest outbreak you've ever read about? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a quick look at some of your more pessimistic ones from the top 5 scary pandemic horror movies. Monty Buffkin says the remake of The Crazies was good, was one of the only remakes that I like. I actually saw the remake before the original and I loved it. It inspired me to watch the original years later. Iridon says, as he sat there, a cold chill went down his spine as the realization slowly crept in. He reached out and let a desperate cry of rage as he found out that there was no more toilet paper. This is a top-notch writing prompt. Folks, I am sure you have a lot of free time on your hands. Make this a short story. I believe in you. Teresa O'Brien says, so is that your niece, sister, or daughter on your shirt? However, it would be appropriately creepy if it was just some random kid on your shirt. Found it at a thrift store. I was hoping someone might recognize it. Fern says, bro, outbreak. Look it up. Man, I've seen Outbreak. My grade 10 biology teacher screened it in class and I thought it was sort of funny. Sorry folks, it's kind of Hollywood. It even starts basically the same way as Dead Alive, with an illegally imported monkey. Raythulu asks what kind of monster tucks his knit cap under his ears. One with tiny ears that could use a little boost, okay? That's all the time we have for today. Before I give a lit stick of dynamite a tender embrace, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more life-leeching literature. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.